Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome to the podcast, my friends. Today, I am so excited to have our guest on. Her name is Heather Black. And Heather is an event planner. She specifically is an expert detail wrangler. And I love this term because she helps entrepreneurs grow their businesses through events and speaking engagements. And she takes all of those details and manages them for her clients. Heather helps them rise above the overwhelm of managing all those details so they can level up their impact and their income. She is a consultant, an event planner, a project manager, and a speaker based in Las Vegas. Welcome, Heather. I'm so glad you're here. I just did a little bit of your bio, and I would love it if you introduced yourself even more than that.
Yeah, absolutely, Brenda. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me today. So I am a Carolina girl. I'm infusing Southern hospitality into neon lights of Las Vegas. I've been here for going on 12 years, but I will always be a South Carolina girl. And I have been in the event space for 24 years. I love it. I love everything about it. Um, I love getting into those details and just swimming around and getting them all wrangled up into one nice, neat little pile. And that's a little bit about me.
Fantastic. What part of South Carolina are you from?
I spent most of my life in the middle of the state in the Columbia area, but I've
Okay.
also been some in the upstate, spent some time on the coast, didn't live there, but love going to the coast. Charleston is my favorite city in all the world. So,
Well, that's phenomenal. My daughter lives just outside of Charleston, so
oh
that's a
yeah,
fun
Mount Pleasant
connection.
or Somerville
Goose
or
Creek. Goose Creek.
oh, Goose Creek is a pretty
Yes.
cool town. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's beautiful out there. I actually really, really love South Carolina. So I'm curious, how did you make that transition from South Carolina, if you love it so much, to the busyness of Las Vegas?
Yeah, it's a bit of a culture shock to come from one to the other for sure. But my brother moved here in 2008, like temporarily for a job. He was trying to test it out. And it worked out. And so he decided he wanted his wife and kids to come and live with him. I don't know why, but he did. And so he moved them. And so then a few years later, after my mom had cared for my dad and my grandmother, both who had terminal illnesses, after they passed away, she was like, well, I'm going to sell my house and go move closer to my grandbabies. And so she moved, and I was like, well, now I'm here by myself. It seems silly. It's really hard to make. I had a really close relationship with my niece and nephew before they moved. It's really hard with the time change to continue that and
Yep.
maintain that. And so I was like, they're not getting any younger. My mom's not getting any younger. I'm certainly not getting any younger. So I sold my house, packed up my stuff, and I quit my job of almost 13 years and moved. And here I am.
Wow, that's awesome. So you have told me a little bit about some of your part of your journey, and I'm wondering if you can go into that a little bit more now because it really ties into who you are now. So can you tell us your story?
Yeah, sure. So I have I don't know, it's kind of a wild background, I guess. But when I first graduated college, I had this dream that I was going to be this, massive PR because I have a degree in public relations, PR star, working for some major corporation. But God had other plans for me, and I ended up in the event space, and I ended up in an abusive marriage, which also was not part of my plan, and was in that marriage for almost 4.5 years, and I not to I didn't know anything about domestic violence. It was not something that I was familiar with. I always thought that abusive relationships were when somebody, just whacks you over the head or beats you all the time. And I didn't understand that there's so much more that goes into that relationship, right? It doesn't start there. If it started there, you would leave, right? It doesn't start there. It starts with some very serious emotional and mental abuse that then you reach and elevates to abuse, physical abuse. And so when I thought I was losing my mind, like I thought I was going crazy, and I went to my doctor and told him what was going on, and he was like, "Yeah, you're not going crazy. You're in an abusive relationship." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what? No, I'm not."
That was shocking for you
Yeah,
then.
I was like,
Yeah.
well, "Yeah, I don't know what I don't understand what you're saying." And so he said, you need to get help in South Carolina. They have a group called Sister Care that helps women in abusive relationships get out, get safe, and get on with their lives, so to speak.
Hmm.
And he said, you need to call them. I was like, I'm not taking resources from somebody that actually needs them. I'm not abused. I don't know what you're talking about. And so I left, but I was processing it, right? Like, what are you talking about? And so I said, well, a phone call's not going to hurt. And so I called them and started talking to the woman, telling her why I was calling. And she was like, honey, he is gaslighting you. You are deaf. This is like the worst of mental abuse that you can experience. And I was like, what? Gaslighting? She was like, there's a movie called Gaslight. I want you to watch it and then call us back. So I did. And I did.
Wow.
And yeah, and it was crazy to find out. But went through that journey and came out on the other side a better person and stronger and more clear about who I am and how to set boundaries and how to have healthy relationships. And started running and started doing all these things for self-care and to improve my life and continuing to work in the event space and then moved to Las Vegas and continued to work in the event space. And then God was like, well, now it's time for you to start your own business. And I'm like, you're so
Oh.
silly.
Isn't that so funny when that
Yeah,
happens?
yeah. Thank you for that idea. But I
Right.
think you need somebody in Minnesota. But thanks for sharing. And he just kept, as he does, kept just putting that there and putting that there. And, I tell people all the time, it took a pigeon in the road, Marcus Lemonis and Cameron Hughes to get me here today. And because he just wouldn't let it go, like, you're going to start this business. And it has been amazing to watch him. Because I just do the work, I'm just Christ executive officer and I'm just here to do the work and make the things happen. But it's been amazing to watch him grow this business and bring the clients in and see where we're going and and I quite honestly see how I have grown in the last year and a half of, starting my business. Because as you know, so owning your own business, it's not just helping your clients. There's all of this that you have to learn and grow and do and become to be able to do that and to provide those services. So it's been an amazing year and a half, and I'm looking forward to the next, however long he allows me to have this business before he has another twist and turn in my story that I don't
Because it
know
will happen, right?
because it will happen.
Right. Right.
No doubt it will happen. And but yeah, I love where I'm at in my life. I love the journey I've been on to get here. And I can look back now because in the moment you're like, why am I going through this? Why me? Right. And but you can look back and be like, oh, that was why, because I need to learn this lesson or I needed to get that piece of, skill. So here we
Okay,
are.
I have so many questions now. Okay, what do you think was the biggest lesson you learned? Like, how did you grow the most out of coming out of that abusive relationship?
I think the biggest growth that I had from that was learning a couple of things. That first of all, just because you have never experienced it doesn't mean you don't know everything about it, right? Don't judge
Right.
other people, right? And there were so many people, because we had a very different, my ex-husband and I, we had a very different facade that we put on when we were in public. And there were people that were shocked that I left him, shocked. Like they couldn't even believe it. Like I don't even understand. And so one of the things I learned was that you don't know what's going on inside somebody's house. You don't. What goes on in those four walls might be very, very different than what you see portrayed on the outside. And I learned that I'm very good at putting on a brave face and that's not necessarily the right thing to do. Sometimes you need to ask for help.
Was that
I
hard for
learned that.
you?
Yeah. Oh God. Oh, so whew, super hard. Super hard. Even for me to ask God when I'm struggling with something, right? Like I just want to dig in and figure it out for myself and pull myself up by my bootstraps because we tell people that all the time. Well, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, how do you do that if you don't know how to do that? How do you? And so it made me a much more compassionate and understanding person because and I learned that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say I can't do this by myself because we're not here to do it by ourselves. We're here, God put us here all together to form community and to support one another and to walk together and not just, a lone reed out there by yourself trying to do it all.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has really struck me in my own process is, especially as I look for divine guidance like you have, in the Bible it says, ask and ye shall receive, right? So many times, like so many times. And I've realized, there's a reason why we're told to ask because we don't want to. It's like it's so hard to ask for help. And we think, oh, we can do it and I'm strong. And we are. But sometimes you don't know what you don't know,
Right.
right? You didn't know you were being gaslighted, you
No.
know?
I
So,
didn't even hear that term. Well, I'd never even heard that term.
right,
Now you hear it all the time, right? And not
right.
even sometimes it's not even applied correctly, but you hear it all. It's much more common and talked about now, which is great. I'm glad that people are shining a light on those things, and because education is the key to changing this culture that we have, where it's okay, to it's not okay. It's not okay, and I love the fact, like right now, I'm reading the Prayer of Jabez every day. And it's so powerful to think about because it's not just about ask. Like you can ask for what you need, you can ask for what you want, but you can ask for the big things because he's going to give you those big, bold, audacious dreams that you have, but you have to ask. He's not just going to deliver it. You have to ask, and then you have to be willing to walk in the steps that he tells you have to walk to receive those big, bold, audacious dreams. But he wants you to ask. He wants to bless us. He wants to give us all the things. He wants to, but we have to be willing to act in faith,
Mm-hmm.
walk in faith, which is super, super hard because I didn't know when I started this business where the money was coming from. I didn't know how I was going to, I mean, I have a fabulous fiance that supports me 110% in this business and he helps pay the bills and it's super fabulous. But, I'm like, I don't know how I'm doing this. I don't know. What am I doing? I don't even know what I'm doing some days, right? Like, I
Like
don't know.
I can so like I so understand that. I mean, in my own businesses, I'm like, oh my gosh, today is like it's just gone to crap. It's
Yeah,
and you're like, why am I even doing this? And but every single time it's just keep going. That's what you got to do. Just show up every single day and just keep going. So,
yeah,
so how do you ask now?
So people tell me I have a unique way of talking to God because, and maybe I do, because I just talk to him, right? Like this is my father. He already knows what I'm thinking. Truthfully, he already knows what I'm going to say. So I don't sugarcoat it. I don't, put any bow on it. I just be like, look, I don't, this ain't working for me. I need some sort of direction. I need to know what we're doing. And I need to know, because this is what I want, right? This is the vision I have for this business. Does this vision align with what you have in store for me?
Hmm.
And how the heck are we going to get there? Because I don't know
Because I don't see
what
it.
the next step is. I don't see it. So,
Right.
a little help here. So I'm really very, very open and just I talk to him like I would talk to my dad, quite honestly. Like I would just
Hmm.
sit down and have, real conversations with my dad when he was here and, just be like, bleh. And I just do the same thing with God. And I'm sure sometimes he's like, oh, here she comes again. But oh, that same cry, just wait. I've told you to wait. Well, wait how long? Until it's time. Well, when it's time? Like I'm like a 3-year-old. Why? When? How? And it just seems to work.
Well, and I think those are very natural reactions. I mean, I find myself doing that all the time too, and it's like, "Oh, I'm super happy. I will do everything you tell me to do and I will, to the T." But I don't want to know why. And I want to know how long I have to do it and I want to know what's it going to get me. And like those answers just they're not usually there.
Yeah.
So but that's where walking in faith is.
Right.
And so I really love that you put your faith into what you do. I'm reading this book right now. I can't remember what it's called, but I will put the link to it in the show notes. But it's all about how when we are spiritually connected, it doesn't necessarily mean it's just like however you interpret that to universe, to God, how whatever you want to do. But if you have some kind of spiritual connection, it is far more easier for you to navigate emotional turmoil and to come out of and avoid depression and so I think that's really amazing that you've got this connection that is very alive and very real for you. So I'd love to get into your event business. And I have to say, events are really near and dear to my heart because I've done a lot of events myself, probably not on the scale that you have done them, but I used to be the director of a community center when I lived in Missouri. And so part of that was, I ran an after school program and summer camp program for youth, but I also helped with the local events that we did. And I had so much fun doing it. Like it was just, there are just certain things that you know about events. Like it's like managed chaos, you know? So,
It is. It is. I
yeah,
tell people, I joke sometimes, I'm the chaos coordinator,
yeah,
because it really is managed. And if you don't manage it, though, then it really is just truly chaos. And that's what
for
makes
sure.
an event so difficult. And events should be fun. And if you're not having fun planning your events, then you're not doing something right. Or maybe that's not your wheelhouse, right? Maybe if
Right.
you don't want to manage the chaos, you don't want to be a cat herder because the number of times that you have to follow up on things that you need to when you're trying to plan your event can be really frustrating and annoying and hard sometimes to like send that email one more time. I still need your form.
Right. That just be the bulldog, right? So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit, why is it that events enhance a business or how can it? Like what do I am assuming you do it mostly for business owners, so you can correct me if I'm wrong there. But what is it that people get out of having an event?
So I do work primarily with small business owners, entrepreneurs, some nonprofits. And the wonderful thing about events and the reason it's important for a business to have them, whether it's an employee appreciation, a customer appreciation, or you're doing a retreat, you're doing a educational thing for your clients, is the power of one to many, right? Because in your business, if you're doing one-on-one sales, you're doing some sort of group things. There's a limited number of hours. There's a limited number of people that you can do that with. But you start having events and you can exponentially grow your impact because you can get in front of 30 people, 50 people, 100 people, and you can grow it to 1,000 and beyond people. And when you're impacting that number of people at a time, then the number of lives that you're changing and that you're impacting the world has exponentially grown. And it's what I get so excited about and what I'm so passionate about is because people like, well, it's just an event. No, because people leave that event with the information that you've given them, whether it's to change their personal life, their wellness, their family, their job, whatever it is, and they're going to apply that. And then they're going to be a better spouse and a better parent and a better sister and a better aunt and a better employee. And then they're going to be better in their community. And then all of that better is going to spread out. And those ripples are just going to keep going, just like throwing a rock into the lake, right? Those ripples just keep going and going and going and going. And so you've impacted so many more lives just with that 30-person event, that 50-person event. It exponentially is impactful. And then you've grown your audience, right? And now more people are familiar with you and your business and what you provide. And you can grow who's in your individual coaching and your group coaching or in your consulting business that you have, whatever your business is, because events apply across the board to everybody. Everybody can have an event. It's a wonderful thing. I love it. I can just keep going on.
And I can tell that you love it. I know, and I actually just had a client event last night because I'm also a realtor. And so we got together with a bunch of other agents in the brokerage and our broker is a comedian. He likes to do stand-up comedy on the side. And so he's like, "Well, let's put a show together." And it was so much fun. And I loved being able to contact my clients and say, "Hey, and have that one-to-one conversation, but then bring them all together and have that group impact like you're talking about." And it really is super impactful. And I think the best thing is people remember how you make them feel.
Yep.
And number one, if you make them feel important by inviting them, and then you make them feel loved by welcoming them and showering them with, goodness and then, giving them a good time and then following up with that, I'm so glad you came. Like it really is, it strengthens that relationship bond.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can meet people at events that you wouldn't meet any other way. And so you
Yes.
can you can totally expand your network and who you know and build relate and that's the other thing. Events are all about relationships. Like
Hmm.
I love the relationships that I've built with people that I've planned event with, that have come to my events. These are people that I haven't seen in 20 years, but if I saw them, right, like we still are connected on all the social media things and we still know what's going on in each other's lives. And there's still people that I could call and be like, hey, could you help me with this? And it's just so impactful and Yeah, I just love
Yeah.
it.
So what are your favorite kinds of events to do?
My favorite kind of events to do, honestly, are those smaller 30 to 100-person events because you can really personalize that experience and really make a solid impact. The bigger the event gets, the harder it is to really be personal and intentional with your time at the event, right? And have those personal conversations there. Thank you so much for coming and show that appreciation, which is so important across the board, not just for events, but across the board. And those really get me excited because once you start getting into the hundreds, 200, 300, I've done events as large as 15,000. Even though that company I worked for at the time did a really great job of appreciation, and we would all staff wise sign a thank you card to everybody that came afterwards, but it's not personal, right?
Right.
Like we're all signing, yeah, okay, yeah, okay. How many more of these do I have to, it's not
Exactly.
personal. I gotta have a break. Um, but when you have those smaller events, you can take the time to send those personal notes. Thank you for coming. Really great that you were here, and you have those personal conversations with each person. And when you do that, then your impact has even grown even more because they really feel special. And that's what it's about. It's about creating an experience for the person.
Yeah, for sure. So how do you even do? I've never done an event that I think the most I ever did was like 2000. So how does for you an event that has 10 or 15,000 people, how does that differ when you're planning it? Because, on some sense you're kind of doing the same stuff,
Yep.
but how is that different between a super huge event versus a smaller event?
So you're doing I mean, like you said, you're doing the same thing. You've got to have a venue, you got to have food, you got to have registration, you have to have all these things. The difference is the scale that you're doing that on. And when you're dealing with 15,000 people, there's so much more that goes into the logistical planning piece of it. Now you have a much bigger venue. So we had 32 breakout rooms that we used for education. We had an almost, 850,000 square foot trade show floor. And it really comes down to much longer planning time frame. Obviously, we worked on about a year
Hmm.
planning time frame. We would end one, have about a day off, and then we'd start the next one. But it really comes down to building it out in a way that you can communicate with everybody that's coming, all of your vendors, all of your attendees, all of your staff, to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that everything flows the way it's supposed to. And so the key to being successful in events that large is to just be really intentional about your timeline and your deadlines and to plan those things out so far in advance that everybody's got it and to be sure you're communicating and planning and thinking ahead of, okay, well, if this doesn't work, what's the backup plan to that?
And that's probably a lot of the details that business owners don't even think about.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times people get into events and they don't really know what they just got themselves into. And then when they start getting into those details, like, oh, I have to do this. And what is a room set? I need what? AV? I mean, not that people don't know what that is, they do, but they're not thinking about how do I manage all of that on top of my business, right? Because there are hard and fast deadlines and you have to be marketing to the people that are going to come. There's just so much that you have to think about on the front end and then manage and set those timelines to manage as you go. And people end up in the weeds pretty quick. And unfortunately, you can lose your shirt and your sanity with events.
You can because it's big scale, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you find are the biggest mistakes that people make when they plan their events?
The biggest mistakes that people make when they're planning their events is they don't allow themselves enough time to do it. They want to have an event and they want to do it in 4 months or they want to do it in 30 days. And that might not be enough time for you to plan, manage, and get everybody signed up for your event. And the second biggest mistake that I see is they don't budget properly.
Mm.
They don't sit down and think about all of the things that they're going to have to pay for, and they don't budget their salary. Because when you're taking time away from your business to plan an event, that is time that you're not billing to your clients or your group coaching, or you're not, selling, you're not out selling your product. Um,
Hmm.
or you're having to do this away from taking time away from your family to plan it because it's going to take hours of your time. And if you don't budget for your salary, then you're not making a profit, you're making a salary. You have to pay yourself to plan for your event. So those are the two biggest things. They don't plan enough long, their lead time isn't long enough, and they're not budgeting properly. So they're not really making the profit that they could be making.
Well, and that's a really good point too. I mean, that's something, when I did events for the community center, it was all wrapped up into my salary, right? So it
Right.
it wasn't a big deal. But you're right, as I do events on my own now, like it takes a long time. Even like I'm doing a series on how to make different kinds of breads because I love making bread.
Ooh.
But even that takes a lot of time to do all the digital artwork, to get it out, the marketing, calling people, inviting people, and you're right, if you don't budget in your salary, and I bet you that's the number one thing people forget
Yep.
to do. I bet they never do that. So I
Yep.
think that's well, and if you really take into all of those costs, it really makes what you do very valuable then.
Right. And if you start factoring in your salary, and when I say budget for your, even if you're doing a virtual event and you're like, Heather, it's virtual, it doesn't cost me anything. Yes, it does.
It does.
It does. It absolutely does. And you still need to be budgeting for that because you need to know how many people you need to convert from that event so you get your ROI, right? And when you start budgeting for your salary, when you start saying this is how much of it's going to cost me from my business to do this, well, then suddenly you have money to pay me to do it for you or to
Right.
support you and walk with you doing it. And it's
Well, and in
important.
the meantime, you can be drumming up other business. So it's a
Right.
win-win.
Right.
Yeah.
So yes, exactly, because you can now take that time that you were using for your event and you can do it for your sales for your business and you can be making more revenue in your business and it's a win-win.
I love that. I think it's so many times I think we have this idea of how something should go. And
Hmm.
really it's just the lack of information,
Yeah.
and really crunching the numbers
Yeah.
of what things really mean and the true cost of, and I mean true cost meaning not just what you're spending money on, but what is that opportunity loss too, you know? So that's really fantastic. I'm curious, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit because
Yeah.
as I'm talking about this, I realized I didn't cover something. So you were in PR before, and then you got into event planning, which they're kind of similar, but how did that transition come? And how did you know that was the right path for you?
So it's kind of funny. I mean, it's looking back at it, it was total God wink time. I was when I graduated college, I went to the University of South Carolina, graduated college, my soon to be husband lived in Clemson, which if
Mhm.
anybody knows, they're arch rivals. And so he was finishing up at Clemson. And so I moved to Clemson. Oh my gosh. And which was a big deal to people like, what? You're leaving Carolina? You're
Right.
in Clemson? What? And I found a great job in a communications department in a nonprofit there where I did all this, standard communications things, wrote press releases and, all those things that you expect to do right out of PR graduation. And so we decided to move back home. We both lived in the same general area and we decided to move back home and be closer. My niece was I guess 2 or 3 at the time. She was small, and it was really hard to say goodbye to her every weekend. She would get upset, I would get upset, and his parents were there, my parents were there. So we decided, okay, we're just going to move back home.
Yeah.
And I, of course, had to find a job. And so there was this job that was the title was like marketing coordinator, blah, blah. And it was a lot of what I was doing, but it also was managing events for these groups that I would be the marketing coordinator for. And I was like, I had shared an office with the meeting planner for the company I worked for at the time. And I was like, well, I mean, I know a little bit. I could probably wing it and figure it out. And so I applied and ended up obviously getting the job with the South Carolina Medical Association. And as I started planning these events for the various medical groups, I was like, wow, I really like this. Like, this is fun. And I'm like, as I became more proficient and more understanding of what it all entailed, because I didn't know much at all about it. And I was like, wow, I'm really kind of good at this. Like, there's just a way to think about events. You have to be able to think about, lay out all the steps, right? But also
Mhm.
be able to think about, okay, what happens if this, and what happens if this, and what happens if this. and be able to be a little bit planned ahead for, I say A to Z, but as many eventualities as you can think of. And my brain just works that way, right? Like you're driving down the road. Well, what happens if that car cuts that car off? That's just
Right.
how my brain. Well, what if they don't have this at the grocery store? What if, my mom says it's just, she's like, you're just so crazy with all the what ifs. Just let go and let God. And I'm like, no, I need to have a plan because that's what I do.
Right.
And so just the way my brain worked, it just fit. It was just a missing puzzle piece. I didn't even know. I had never heard of meeting planning or event planning before that. And it just really was a God wink that that was where I was supposed to be. So
That's fantastic. I've never had an event that didn't have something go wrong. Like I
100%.
don't think it ever, I don't think that exists. So how have you, I mean, obviously you try to mitigate for that.
Yes.
But what have you learned about just dealing with unexpected problems through
Yeah.
your real estate business?
Yeah. So I actually just recently did a blog post about how I deal with it when it's called The Unexpected Happens, right? Because I have never had an event in 24 years that the unexpected has not happened. And I use what I call the bar method, and it does not involve alcohol. Spoiler alert. Sorry, everybody. If you were like, oh, martini recipe.
Nope.
No. So the bar method is you breathe, assess, and you react.
Hmm.
Because the first thing that's going to happen, whether it's a small thing and or it's a big thing that's happened that's gone awry and is unexpected, um, your adrenaline is just going to kick in. Like you're immediately going to go into that fight or flight mode. So just take
Hmm.
a couple of deep breaths and calm that response down because you can't make a good response. You can't make a good judgment call in that fight or flight moment, right? Like it's just gonna, you're just, knee-jerk reaction, and that might not be the best case. Then you're gonna assess the situation and just figure out how bad is this? Do we need a communication plan? Who else do I need to involve? Do I need to let my attendees know? Do I just need to replace the speaker? Like, how bad is this? Assess it, come up with a couple of solutions, and then you're going to react to it, right? Then you're going to
Hmm.
figure out, you start making the phone calls. Okay, President so and so, we have a problem, or oh, okay, hotel, this isn't right. But you're just going to take, and it doesn't have to take a long time to breathe and assess, right? You can do it pretty quickly, particularly if you've been working on this event for a while. You're gonna know what your options are. But just take a
Hmm.
moment, and I say this, not if it's like an emergency situation, because if you have an emergency situation, you're going to have an emergency plan that's going to tell you what to do. Please have an emergency plan. Because you
Right.
don't want to hesitate, right? Because hesitation and emergency becomes a tragedy. But just for your run of the mill, unexpected, your speaker cancels, the room's not set right, the your shipment didn't arrive on time of your goodie bags or whatever. Those kind of unexpected things that happen. Just breathe, assess, and react. And you'll have a much better outcome.
I think that is super wise. I remember once I had scheduled the zoo in so I live in the Kansas City area. So the zoo would come out and they would do these little presentations. And they didn't come. They didn't come. They didn't come. Like I had probably 50, 60 people out waiting for the zoo to come. They didn't come. So I'm calling them up and they're like, yeah, it's tomorrow. And I
Mhm.
realized I had told them the wrong date. And let me tell you, my stomach dropped because I knew that it was my fault. And it was just so bad. So we ended up, but that's what we did. We just took a moment
Yep.
and we just said, okay, let's just calm down here, and then let's decide what are our options, what we can do. And we decided, well, the zoo is already planning on coming. And so we said, hey, we made a mistake. They're coming tomorrow. Please come back. And it was awkward, but and I had to own up to my own mistake.
Yep.
But here's the thing, a solution is always there.
Always. And
Always.
we all make mistakes. And one of the things I've learned through 24 years of being in this business is you write down the wrong date, you write down the wrong day, you write down the wrong time. If you own that and you say, it was my mistake, I'm sorry, this is how we're going to fix that, and then figure out a way to prevent that from happening in the future, people are going to respect that but if you try to cover it up, if you try to that's just not going to end well for anybody. So if you make a mistake, it's happened to me. I've put the wrong date on, scheduling a bus and the bus didn't show up when it was supposed to. That's a problem. That's a real
Yep.
problem,
Yep. That's a big problem.
you know? And but you have to own it. You have to say. And if you do that, everyone is going to appreciate you more because now they're going to see you as human, as just like them, and they're going to be like, well, it sucked, that was an inconvenience, but they're going to move on. But yeah, there's a solution to every problem. Everything that comes up in an event, there's a solution for.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because it, as an event planner, even in a community center kind of setting, like if people respect you, and I found this over and over again, like if you delivered what you promised and then owned up to the mistakes and
Yep,
said, "Hey, this is what we're going to do," then your next event is even better.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I used to tell one of my bosses when I would get called in, because I'd made a mistake or whatever. And I would just always own it, be like, yep, I did that. Sorry. And this is what I'm going to do to make sure it's not going to happen. That mistake's not going to happen again, but I'll make some new ones. So
Yep.
I'll be like, get ready.
Exactly. And we'll learn from those.
So he just knew, like, he knew I would own it and he knew that I would fix whatever process failure I had that caused it. And, but there would be a new one that was going to come along. So we're never going to be perfect. We're not here to be perfect. And our mistakes are just learning opportunities. And it applies
Absolutely.
to events in life.
Absolutely. I think that is a fantastic golden nugget to take away from this. Okay, so you've talked, uh, you've kind of alluded to some of your values, as far as, your conversations with God and being led by faith. And will you share with us a little bit more about, your own core values and how you use those in running your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my core values for my business spell out rise above because of Phoenix collaborations, but it's about respect. I respect my clients. I respect their time. I respect, what they're trying to do, and integrity. I, integrity is so important to me. If I tell you I'm going to do something and I'm going to get it done, if I can't for some reason, I'm going to own it and be upfront with you about that. But if I say it's going to be done, you can bet your bottom dollar that it's going to get done. And I just think it's just so important for me to be honest and transparent with my clients because I'm working from home. They're all over the country, one in Canada. They're really all over the world. And they have to be able to trust me. So it's important that I have integrity, and I fully believe in service. One of the things I'm launching this year is a arm of my business, a piece of my business, going to be called Phoenix Cares, where I'm giving 10% of my profits to various charitable organizations, and I'm going to start donating my time because I'm not just here to build this business and impact my clients their lives and their audience's lives. I'm here to serve God, and this business is here to grow his kingdom. And so I need to be living that as I go through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm very authentic. What you see is what you get. Like, I'm not gonna put on a fake facade and be, because I learned that long, long ago when I was married, that it's much more important to just be true to who you are. Know who you are, own it, be proud of it, and live it.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Well, and again, it's people see that in your actions,
right.
and if you live it and you act it and you don't have to say it,
Nope.
So I love the your rise above an acronym. I think that's really super cool, especially related to the whole Phoenix thing. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic. So good. So I guess I didn't realize that you had clients all over the world. So how do you do that remotely then?
Lots of Zoom calls. I spend a lot of time on Zoom every day. And I have the best clients. I love my clients. And they're super, super chill, super laid back, but change makers, right? They're really having a really huge impact on the world. And I love communicating with them. And we use WhatsApp, text, calls, Zoom, email, all the things. It doesn't matter what time zone. I have one that's on the East Coast, so I make sure that she's the first one I touch in the mornings because she's already, I don't start my day on the computer until about 9:30. So she's already at lunchtime. So that's the first one. And so I just manage it that way. Like, and then I prioritize who has the biggest projects going on, what's the deadlines, what needs to be approached first. Because it really doesn't matter where they are. And I love it. I had a client recently, he said to me, he was like, I know if you're going to do something, you're going to do it. You're going to do it well, and I'm not going to have to worry about it. So I'm just going to give this to you to handle. I'll be like, okay,
Oh, fantastic. What a huge compliment. Like that's
yeah.
major.
Oh, it was such a huge. I was like, I love that so much. But that's what I do. That they trust me to know that I'm going to do the things that need to get done and get them done on time. And so I just prioritize my day. Well, what needs to get done today, and make sure that I have my little touches with them. I don't bother them. I shouldn't say bother them. I don't touch base with them necessarily every day because I'm doing my thing and they're doing theirs. But I do stay in touch with them throughout the week.
So
And
when you have an event
yeah.
that's away from the outside of Las Vegas, are you always present at the event or are there some cases where you just set it up and they just plug and play?
Yeah, I just set it out as both. I can do either way. I have a retreat coming up at the end of Sedona, at the end of the
In,
month in
in Sedona,
Sedona.
which is a fabulous place.
Fabulous place. I love it.
Yes.
I'm kind of disappointed that I'm not going to this one, but this is a much smaller event for her, and she really just doesn't need the on-site support. So I'm like, but I'm like, I can just drive right on
Yeah,
down.
just a few hours away.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's just plug and play. I put it all together and then give them all of the information, all of their setups and sign things and, make sure they have all the confirmation numbers and all those things. And then I just sit here and kind of wait for the phone to ring if they need me and hope that they don't. They went to Costa Rica last October and I didn't get to go to that, but we had some people that flights, of course, if you try to fly anywhere, be prepared for it to not happen. And so
Right.
we had some people that were going to miss their chartered flight out to the location we were going to. And so I was here, on the ground and was able to manage that while she was able to just deal with her people at her retreat, which was fabulous that I was able that she had somebody back home, so to speak, that could be that boots on the ground. So it works out.
That's great. So you've got basically different packages that you can purchase then, correct?
Yes.
So do you do just a consulting? Like if somebody just wants to just pick your brain and how does that work?
Yeah, so I just added consulting packages. So I have three types of packages. Consulting packages done with you and done for you. And
Hmm.
obviously it's just a different level of support. But consulting packages, I'm still tweaking them because they're kind of new. But basically it's kind of an hourly based package. You buy so many hours, and then we will have regular phone calls where we talk about making sure that you're on task and that your event's moving forward. And then I'm here as a resource if like Heather, could you look at this contract? What does this clause mean? Because a lot of people sign contracts and they don't understand what they just signed, right? And in the
Yeah.
event space, those contracts can get very complicated. So then I serve as that role, and then I can help them set up templates. You can use it to walk through your budget, right? I can help you set up your budget to make sure that you're budgeting for all the things. Um, so yes, consulting done with you and done for you. That's what I'm here for.
Awesome. So you've shared with us a few of your lessons learned and golden nuggets words of wisdom. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with us?
Oh, so much, Brenda.
I
No,
know. It's such a fun question, isn't it?
yeah. Um, you know, don't let this is don't let the thought of having an event and how overwhelming that sounds, like don't go and Google yourself some overwhelm, okay? Like don't do that. Because if you go to Google and say, how do I add events to my business? You're going to get this long list of stuff, and about 5 clicks in, you're going to have conflicting information. You're going to have 6 templates downloaded, and you're still not going to know what to do. So you're just going to be like, well, maybe that's just not for me. If you have a passion to have events in your business, if you have a passion to have an event to change people's lives, do it. Find someone that can help you. Find the right person to walk that path with you and have that event, because you're going to change your life and you're going to change other lives. And that's what we're all here for. So just do the thing. Just do the thing, but do it the right way so that you don't lose your shirt and your sanity, right?
And you can start small. It doesn't
Yes,
have to be
please.
a big grandiose thing, It's like I'm like my bread classes, like it that didn't I that took me hardly anything to do. And like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. I've done it a million times. Come and see how I do it. You know? So
Yeah.
it's you can start small and easy. So
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I highly recommend that you start small and you grow from there, because if you try to start big, you're just going to be underwater from the get-go. So that's one of the things that I talk about in my monthly class that I have called Add Events to Your Business Without Losing Your Shirt or Sanity. And we talk about that step-by-step strategy. How do I do this and be successful? And then we're going to talk about how do I budget so that I'm budgeting for profit and not budgeting for loss or just my salary. And then we talk about how do you manage all the details. And so I share kind of those secrets of the nonprofit world where budgeting is king, right? Because you don't have an
For
event
sure.
budget for it. And as well as I show you my secrets of how I've managed events for up to 15,000 people. How do you do all those details? So um,
Okay, I didn't know you did this class, so tell me about, the logistics of that and the how and the where and all that.
yeah, so I do just started in January. I do it once a month. This month, it'll be on Tuesday, March the 26th at 12 p.m. Pacific time because I'm Pacific time. Um, and it's basically on Zoom. If you sign up, you get the replay, you get a workbook, and then if you can attend, obviously, and then at the end you'll get a free anybody that signs up gets a free 30-minute strategy session with me, so we can talk about whether it's your strategy, how do I step by step gradually grow my events because you do want to start small and
Hmm.
grow from there. Don't start with a 100-person event unless I mean, Mel Robbins probably could, but most of us aren't in that boat, right?
Right.
You, so start small, and we'll talk about that strategy of stair stepping it right into those bigger events that you want to have, and then we'll talk about what you need to budget for and all the things that you probably didn't think about, because they don't know because they've never done it before, and that's not judgment in any way, shape, or form. It's just if you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
Um, and then we'll talk about the checklist and timelines on how to create those and make sure that you hit your deadlines and get it all done.
So where do people sign up for it?
I have a link that it's on Zoom, and I haven't put the March one on Eventbrite, but it'll be on Eventbrite probably by the end of today.
Okay.
And I need to put it on my website. It's not there yet either, but it'll be there too.
Okay, so are you good if I share that link with my listeners?
Yeah, yeah, the link to
Okay.
sign. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. So where else can people find you if they want to learn more about you or contact you?
I am on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. You can search for just my name, Heather D. Black, I think is how I always have it listed. Search for Phoenix Collaborations. It should all come up. I'm there. You can go to my website, phoenixcollaborations.com. All of my links are there. Um, yeah, find me anywhere, everywhere.
Okay, well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Heather, for being on the
Thank
podcast
you.
today. It was so much fun talking with you. I just felt like it's just fun talking with somebody who does what you do, but you do it so much on such a bigger scale than I do. So,
Yeah,
but
every event is
so
important, and
fun.
no matter what scale you're at, we're all in the same boat, and so we can all collaborate and work together for that.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think that is really wise and it's true. So awesome. So thank you again for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brenda. I was happy to be here.
So many good things about Heather and what she shared, not just what she does, but her values and how she runs her business. A couple of things that I really liked about this conversation. Number one, I loved her talking about asking and how difficult that was, and how even though it was difficult and she did it, she really got a lot of out of that, and how she continues to ask for guidance. And sometimes I don't think it's relegated just to a higher power. Just asking for help from other people is they can be really tough, super tough. But I have found that when we do, and I've seen this in not just myself, but in so many other people, like good things happen. And it's a lot of times it's not even necessarily meant for you, but asking opens up an opportunity perhaps for somebody else, or the person you're talking to really needed a conversation, or and so you just never know what is going to come from asking. And so if you have a hard time asking, I would really take a deep dive into why that is a struggle for you, and really see who would be your key people. Who do you trust the most to ask whatever it is, maybe advice on something or for help on something? And they could be different people depending on the different situations. So asking is so, so important. The other thing that I really loved was her breathe, assess, and react when she's facing a problem. And I think this is fantastic, not only for when you're in a high stress situation, like an event, but even when something happens and you just feel like your world has shattered. It's so easy to go into that reactionary, you know, position, the fight, flight, or I said that wrong, the fight or flight response. It's so easy to go into that where you're reacting and then acting and you're forgetting to breathe altogether. But if you just take that moment to take a breath and to really get yourself out of that fight or flight so that your brain can function, then you're able to assess it because you cannot assess when you're just reacting. So you've got to breathe, assess, and then react. I found that to be super, super great advice. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you found some value in this. And just know that your purpose can be found in your story. Until next time, take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take. Let your light glow, being you is the greatest way to grow.